This podcast is not intended to provide any investment advice. The opinions expressed here by either the hosts or guests do not necessarily reflect the views of PSA, Collectors Holdings, or any of their affiliates. Any discussion of collectible values in the past or present is not a guarantee of future performance.
Hello and welcome to The Index. My name is Chris McGill and I'm here with Ryan Green and Jack Archer. The Index discusses the hobby from the vantage point of price data and market trends provided by Card Ladder. Here's the rundown. First, we overview notable auction prices realized over the last month, and then we discuss market swings, both by player and by card. Ryan, let's get started.
So we thought we'd flip things a little bit. I actually, we were looking at the rundown of this show today. Chris puts incredible data from Card Ladder together each month, as you guys know, when you check in for the index. And one of the things we started noticing is as we get into the fall and football season's going, basketball season's on the horizon, baseball is hitting its peak in the postseason, you're really seeing some timely trends with what's happening on the field, on the court, in the arena, with what's happening with cards and with their markets. And Chris, we're going to start this month's index looking back on movement from September 2020 and into early October. We're going to look at rising and falling player indexes first, and I am super excited to talk about these because once again, the timeliness here hits just right.
Yeah, right on, man. Well, the first player index we have up is Brock Purdy, who his player index in Card Ladder is up 34% in the last month, which seems high because for anything to appreciate by that amount in a 30-day span is a lot. But it also seems low just given how Purdy has sort of until very recently, in other words, until Sunday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys recently, Purdy was a novelty, an obscurity, an afterthought, not somebody who was being considered as a quarterback at the front lines of NFL quarterbacking. But if you had been following the stats, such as quarterback rating, which is ESPN's proprietary metric, he's been number one all year, and he still is right now. So it's interesting, sort of Purdy, the mystery surrounding him, and sort of this breakthrough to the mainstream that he had. So what is driving this 34% increase in Brock Purdy's Card Ladder index? Well, one of the cards that's moving within his index is the 2022 Prism Silver PSA 10. That's his rookie Prism Silver in the highest grade. That card sold for $561 on September 7th, and that was 3 days before the 49ers' first regular season game. And then most recently, it sold for $1,150 on October 8th. So more than doubling over the span of the first month, the first 4 to 5 weeks of the NFL season. What do you guys think about Brock Purdy's ascent in the hobby so far this season?
Winning sells.
Yeah.
But seriously, he's been incredible. And I don't think he gets enough credit because there's McCaffrey, because there's Kittle, because there's Debo. But if I'm looking at QBs in the league today, I only have 9 names that I'm confident could slide in for Brock Purdy in that system and be more successful than him. And even then, some of the names are like a little bit iffy. He's like the real deal.
Yeah.
And he hasn't lost. He lost the one game in the playoffs where he was injured. But not counting that, aside from that, he hasn't lost. It's been incredible.
It's incredible to watch like the decision making and how seasoned he is. Obviously played a lot of college football, and that I think makes a huge difference for a guy being able to come in and play and succeed right away like he has. But the thing that really stands out to me is he's played so well that almost nobody talks about the fact that their GM traded 3 first-round picks less than 2 years ago to move up to number 3 in the draft to draft the guy who he replaced. Like, that's how good he's been. But, Chris, it's really fascinating what you said here with the Silver Prism because, on this show, we've talked about before. That's kind of like the barometer we use to measure a modern quarterback's movement in the hobby. That's kind of such a signature card. But I'm seeing some big sales of him. I saw at Golden just over a week ago, his gold vinyl PSA 10 Prism out of 5 sold for 34K. And I know seeing these price tags on ultra modern 2022, 2023 cards can draw response, but I was looking at that and then watching the Sunday night game against Dallas thinking that buyer might have kind of gotten a steal on this.
If the Prism Silver is going for $1,000,
Yeah.
the gold vinyl out of 5 going for 34x that, I mean, that seems it seems ridiculous saying a $34,000 card is a steal, but
It might be.
the math says it is.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we talk about high-end Prism, Optics, Select, Parallels, like, that's the pinnacle in terms of non-autos of these guys, and I'm interested to see, Chris, what you think in terms of how much room might there still be for him growth-wise based on success, potentially the rest of this year looking at least in the somewhat short term.
Yeah, well, Purdy is going to have to shake off some of the branding that's been given to him by the commentariat over the first however many games of his career. And by the way, if you narrow the parameters to Purdy and you say, what's his record in games where he has attempted at least 10 passes, playoffs and regular season combined, he's 13-0. The guy really has never lost a game that you could say he was the true quarterback for the duration of the game. And he does have a lot of college experience, but he's also only 23 years old. So this is such an interesting storyline for the NFL. I think if you were to compare Purdy to the star power that the other faces of the NFL have, he's nowhere near their level. I mean, and also in real life, he's nowhere near their level. He's on a contract that pays him like $750,000 or $800,000 a year for 4 years. They have easy. I mean, how, given the tax rates that California has, plus living in one of the most expensive areas in the world, which is the Bay Area, I mean, he is not living the lavish NFL lifestyle that the top-rated quarterback in this league would live, you would think, right? But here's what I think, Ryan. I think that we're going to learn a lot about Purdy's market when the current Golden Elite auction ends, because that auction has Purdy's true NT Shield 1 of 1, the true, which is already over $100,000 when you factor in buyer's premium based on early bids that have come in. And that auction also has a PSA 10 of his Stars and Stripes NT 1 of 1. So it's got basically his 2 best National Treasures cards that will ever be made of him. One of them even in a PSA 10 running against each other at the same time with weeks to go. So we're going to figure out just how many shockwaves the Purdy market is going to create within the hobby. But I think in terms of his image, of his branding, of who he is as a player, he's really kind of been painted into a corner of being sort of a byproduct of a terrific system that's loaded with weapons and has a terrific defense to boot. And I think it's going to be hard to shake that. It's going to take a lot of work for him or for any quarterback who is in that position to overcome that stigma that he's been labeled with.
It will take a lot, but we've seen it before. If you're as old as me, you can remember the early 2000s when the Patriots won those first few Super Bowls with Tom Brady, and it was the defense that carried them in those years. And Brady's job was just to put up enough points and not turn the ball over. It took several years for that rep to get shed. Hopefully, it doesn't take as much for Purdy going forward. Now, on the flip side, that's someone whose market is really heating up early in the football season. Like we mentioned, baseball is kind of hitting its peak in the postseason, but there's a lot of guys who didn't make the postseason whose markets have seen some movement. Who do we want to highlight as one of the most notable falling player indexes from the last month, Chris?
Yeah, so we are in the throes of playoff baseball, and my Cubs somehow snatched defeat from the jaws of victory and missed the playoffs. So I'm I'm watching with uh with a lack of enthusiasm, let's say, but yeah, we have a baseball superstar here who's down 19% his card ladder indexes over the last month, and that's Aaron Judge. Now, Judge, the cards from his index in particular that are impacting this decline include his 2017 Topps Paper PSA 10, which was selling for $100 even as late as August, but it has since dropped to $68. It even recorded a sale in the last few weeks right around $50. So there's been a pretty big uh, lack of market enthusiasm for the time being for Aaron Judge as the MLB playoffs push on.
We talk about the Yankee premium, but when the Yankees aren't winning, you're just as susceptible to dropping as anyone else, and Judge, of course, really hit the peak at the end of last season where he hit the 62 home runs. Everything was scorching hot. But as you learn these modern markets, that unless you sustain that, you're due for something like this. But again, with the Yankee premium being attached to a guy like that, just as good of an opportunity is there for the rebound, right? Let's move to rising and falling cards from the last month, and we're going to stick with baseball. Chris, what's really been moving upwards?
All right, so now on the flip side, who is shining in baseball right now? Who has been shining during the latter part of this season and into the playoffs? It, of course, is Ronald Acuna. And up 22% over the last month is the 2017 Bowman Chrome Prospects Autographs Ronald Acuna PSA 10. This card has a population of 134, and it last sold for $2,827 in early October. Now, this card was logging sales of 2,100, 2,500, 2,300 in late August and early September, and now it's got a sale of 3,000, and then it has this most recent sale at 2,800. So it's clearly taken a step up in the market. And what's interesting to note here is even though Acuna's market has certainly trended up across all of his cards throughout this season and into the playoffs, his market is still pretty far off from the pandemic era peak, which for this card in particular, his Bowman Chrome First Auto, that peaked in a grade of PSA 10 at $6,900 in April of 2021. So today, it's going for less than half of that, but certainly it is up quite a bit from where it was earlier on this season and even as recently as a month ago.
Does this seem low to either of you? His Bowman Chrome First, I mean, it's just the base card. It's not the refractor. It's not numbered.
It's an auto.
But it's an auto, and it's PSA 10.
And not only did the price seem a little low, the population seems low. Given, in the 2020, 2021 releases, how many of those autos you saw get submitted to PSA. This is interesting.
The thing with Acuna, too, is that he's so photogenic and looks so cool in nearly every card.
Mm.
Doesn't look that cool in this one. So there's a lot of there's some incredible Acuna cards, and Topps does a really great job choosing those photographs that I desperately want. This one does a little bit less to me outside of the fact that it has that coveted first badge on it.
Also makes you wonder about we talk about the 2020 and 2021 as people were really getting into prospecting. It wasn't as big in 2017. So you wonder how many of those autos, really got preserved, really, just kind of got pushed to the side. He wasn't seen as a top prospect at the time when that product came out. So very interesting number on that. Now, let's look at a falling card. We're going to go back to football here. This one will be interesting to discuss, Chris.
Yeah, I think this guy's gotten a tough break because he's performed pretty well this year. If you just isolate his numbers, if you look at some of the metrics that like PFF that are just sort of evaluating each throw and not penalizing him for drop passes and not penalizing him for the fact that he has a pretty terrible defense. But the player whose card is down this month is the 2012 Prism number 230 Russell Wilson towel up variation PSA 10. It last sold for $234 on October 8th, but very recently, as recently as September 10th, which was the day of the Broncos' first game against the Raiders, it sold for $444. And even prior to that, in early August, it had sold for $620. So it has had quite the drop-off since the summer excitement over the Broncos adding a new coach and having a lot of potential going into the season. Now, it's only a Pop 72 because this is the variation to the base. So this one is not as common as the towel down base version. But even at that low pop, this card still is falling rapidly. Now, what's interesting to note from a context from a longer term point of view, this card had peaked at $3,000 in August of 2021. Yeah, that's a lot. And I'm sure the population has increased a bit since then. So really comparing today's price to that price isn't apples to apples entirely. But also worth noting, prior to 2020, in other words, in between 2013 and 2019, when graded copies first started showing up, this card sold in the $15 to $25 range for those 7 years. So here we are, somewhere in the middle, far away from a $3,000 peak, but also far away from the $15 to $25 range pre-2020.
This is I've never thought about this, but it just popped into mind. Is Russell Wilson a Hall of Famer to you guys? Because I feel like that factors in here a little bit because, you look at the career arc and you mentioned a lot of the specifics. You wonder if his prices where they are right now, is this just kind of where it's going to settle in? Are there any more peaks left for him at this stage in his career and where he is, organizationally and all those things?
There's just like a likability factor that
Mhm.
comes with a lot of players in terms of their collectability and how closely those things are aligned. He's probably a Hall of I mean, most Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, all Hall of Famers outside of like the Trent Dilfers of the world.
That was the first name that
Yeah.
came to mind.
and things like that. What's interesting about this card and this era of football cards especially is that there's sort of two flagship rookie cards with Topps Chrome and Prism being out at the exact same time. I think it cannibalizes each other a little bit, which drives prices down. You see it other players of that era. But still, $3,000 to $234. That seems like an awfully steep fall.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to see if this market's hit the lowest it can go for Russ, because like you said, probably a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. We don't know what all is left in there for him in the next few years, but that's a pretty steep drop. So we're going to take a quick break here on the index, and we'll be right back to talk about notable auction results from September 2023 with one in mind in particular. Be right back. Hey guys, I'm dropping back in here really quick before we continue the show to give you a quick reminder about PSA's October grading specials. Available through the end of the month and both exclusive to our Collectors Club members. We're taking it way back with the first special, and this is one that is a nod to vintage collectors and also set registry members who are looking to slab up those ongoing projects that they've been working on for a while. It's a 1950s vintage grading special. Yes, cards from any category manufactured between 1950 and 59 can be submitted at just $14.99 per card through the end of the month. This applies to cards with a max declared value of $199.99 per card. Also, if you're looking for a speedy service at our Value Plus tier, it is available in October at just $34.99 per card for those cards with a max DV of $499.99. With Value Plus, you're paying for a nice boost to the turnaround time experience, with cards processed in 20 business days or less once received in our operation. As I mentioned, these offers are Collectors Club member exclusive, but we also have an offer right now to become a member this week at a discounted rate. Visit psacard.com/join and use the code PSA1010, that's PSA1010, for 20% off your annual membership, which includes access to our monthly grading specials, as you already heard about, a 12-month subscription to PSA Magazine, and a $120 loop credit for ripping some packs. Also, visit psacard.com/specials for all of the details on this month's PSA grading specials, and bookmark the page because at the beginning of each month, we'll have new offers up there for you. And now, back to the show. All right, welcome back to the Index. Ryan Green, Jack Archer, and Chris McGill from Card Ladder. Chris, every month we like to talk about usually a couple of notable auctions from the past month and dive into kind of what that sale means. We're, just like last month, this month we're going to focus on one because one really stood out above the rest. So set the scene here.
Yeah, I mean, look, every month you got your Mantles, probably a few going into the $1 million range or close. You've got your Brady contenders, going for six figures. You've got a LeBron RPA going for six figures. Maybe you've got a Kobe 90s parallel getting up there. I mean, it after a while, it's sort of is like, okay, we see a lot of the same cards, the really strong market indicator cards doing well. But for this segment, for this month, I wanted to dive deep instead on one of the most interesting cards, I think, to hit the market, and interesting in all sorts of ways, which I think we'll get into here as we discuss it. And we're going to dive deep into this card and the set that it comes from and the product that it comes from. So the card in question is the 2021-22 Flawless Triple Logoman 1 of 1, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Luka Doncic, PSA 10, which it sold for $302,400. And I just want to step back before we even get into the background on this card and the market for it. Can we just talk about how difficult it is to get or to see a PSA 10 on a flawless card, let alone a flawless Triple Logoman, and sort of what you guys think, sort of like what does it add appeal-wise, even to a 1 of 1 when it's a flawless that's in a PSA 10 holder? Because for me, it adds quite a bit.
It's bananas, especially when the Giannis, Embiid, Joker Triple Logoman also got a PSA 10. It made me think that the folks at Panini really took their time with these specific cards to be as careful as humanly possible with them, especially given that the LeBron Triple Logoman was only graded PSA authentic.
I agree. It adds a lot. I will say this. I saw the Giannis Joker Embiid when it was here at PSA after it was graded. And I was handed the slab and I looked at it and I was so sucked in by the card and how cool the Triple Logomen are. I didn't even think to look at the grade at first. And someone in there said, "Oh, wow, it got a 10." And I looked and said, "Oh, damn." It does add a lot, but I think the card is so compelling. It's not the first thing I looked for. But when I saw that, it did elevate it that much more in my eyes.
Here's what's so great about the 2021 Logomans and Flawless too. 70th anniversary patches.
Oh
They
my
have
God.
like a cracked ice diamond effect to it. Just style points for days.
Definitely. Okay, so let's use that to jump off into a little bit of the background on the flawless Triple Logoman in general. So this card from the product of Flawless is a very recent phenomenon. So Flawless first introduced the Triple Logoman insert set into 2020-2021 Flawless. So just a year before this LeBron, Steph, Luka triple came out. The year prior was the very first year that Flawless started issuing the Triple Logoman insert set. Now, this set features only 5 cards, only 5, and they're all numbered 1 of 1, and there are no parallels or other variations. So it's literally 5 cards, just 5 different cards numbered 1 of 1. Now, of the original, the debut issue of Flawless's first Triple Logoman set, one of those 5 was the famous LeBron Triple Logoman, which features LeBron in his Cavaliers, Heat, and Lakers uniforms and features game-used Logomen from LeBron in his Cavs, Heat, and Lakers uniforms. That card sold for $2.4 million in June of 2022, as was previously noted, in a PSA authentic holder. So how does that sale, the first from the first issue of the Triple Logoman Flawless set, the LeBron triple, how does that sale compare to the $300,000 sale of the LeBron, Curry, Luka second-year Triple Logoman PSA 10?
Kind of surprised there's that big of a chasm between the two. It's kind of my first reaction.
The thing with the LeBron though, it's 3 LeBron
Yeah.
Logomans. The idea of 3 different teams was so unique. It was the first of its kind, but it's also just LeBron. You might be a massive LeBron fan, and Steph Curry has always bothered you. Or
Yeah.
you're not a big believer in Luka. So to really buy into this card, you have to be a super fan and a super believer of Luka, specifically, who's much younger than you, to really spend big money on something like this.
Yep, that's what always makes these cards so fascinating is when, especially when there's a shot that one of the players featured on the card might not ever get to the status of the other two. It makes it interesting. And a little bit later, we're going to talk about the other instances in which a combination of 2 of these 3 players have ever appeared together on a card before, and it's not very often. But before we get to that, let's now talk about this particular card in the set that it particularly comes from. So, as we mentioned, this is the second issue of the Triple Logoman from Flawless set. It also has only 5 cards, each numbered 1 of 1 with no variations. The other 4 Triple Logomen were very interesting to me. So obviously you've got this one. You've got the Luka, LeBron, Steph. Here's the other 4. Cade, Evan Mobley, and Scotty Barnes. James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie, all in their Nets uniforms. Okay. Jalen Green, Vince Carter, and Zach LaVine. That's I don't know how that one came to. There must be some theme there. And then the 4th alternative one was the most captivating one, I think, which is the last 5 league MVPs. Giannis, or the winners of the last 5 league MVPs with Giannis, Embiid, and Jokic. That one also graded at PSA 10, and it sold in the auction before last. So it sold back in August, and it sold for $84,000. So how does the $84,000 sale stack up to this $300,000 sale? And what do you think about all these 4 other Triple Logomen? Like, this product, the deeper you dive into it, the more interesting it gets.
The one thing I would say is if I pulled any of the 3 outside of the LeBron, Luka, Steph, or the Giannis, Embiid, Jokic, I'd feel like kind of punched in the gut. I'd be like, had a 1 in 5. If I'm going to pull a logo man, it had to be one of these. It's a really cool concept, and I think they did a really nice job of not overdoing it this year, because you could totally see this being something where they could jump the shark and make like 25 different combinations of them. And I like that they kept this pretty exclusive.
So now let's bring this discussion to a close and focus a little bit on the market for this particular card. So what's interesting is that this is the only card I could find that featured only these 3 players, LeBron, Steph, and Luka, to ever publicly sell. And granted, Luka is much newer to the league than the other 2, and he's far less accomplished, but he's entering his 6th season. We've had 5 years of 30-ish annual Panini NBA products. And this is the only time I could find a card that had these 3 players and it had a public sale. Now, granted, it's unusual to have a card with only 3 players, and the Triple Logoman certainly is a great one to feature these 3 on. But that also speaks to sort of the rarity of this card conceptually, is that putting these 3 together, this is the first time these 3 have ever been put together on any caliber of card that is publicly sold. Now, there are no public sales of a card with LeBron and Steph only, which was interesting. I mean, these 2 are nemesis. They're for them to not have a public sale of a card with the 2 of them on it was interesting. I almost wonder, as we sort of think about the $300,000 price tag, how much of a factor, I'll pause right here and I wonder what you guys think about this. How much of a factor was it that this is the first of its kind, as far as I can tell, as far as my research can tell. This is the first issuance, the first public offering of a high-end or any card featuring LeBron and Steph together.
I think it matters. I know Jack and I talk about this a lot. We're both like big on, hobby firsts and the historic significance of cards. I think there's definitely something there, especially when you mention, not to the degree of like the way that Bird and Magic were linked together throughout the 80s, but if you've been an NBA fan over the course of the past decade, LeBron and Steph are absolutely in that manner. Now, does it matter that there's a third guy involved in the card? I ask you, does it matter that there's a third guy in Dr. J involved in Bird and Magic's rookie card? I don't think it does, but it's kind of one of those things to each their own.
Here's what's fun about this card too, and what's exciting that Luka is on it. LeBron and Steph, like there's still additional upside with, another ring that either of them could potentially get. But there's a lot of upside with Luka. And some of that fun, some of that thrill is something that you're also purchasing when you're spending this kind of money on a card like this.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that I hadn't processed here, is that there's plenty of room to speculate on this card, particularly because of Luka's inclusion. And by the same token, there's plenty of opportunity for this card to lose cachet if Luka never really becomes a name that belongs mentioned alongside those two over the longer arc of basketball history.
I think the PSA 10 grade, like people say grades don't matter on a 101 or grades don't matter on a card as rare and special as this.
Till it's a 10.
But when it's a PSA 10, I mean, that's pretty nasty on a card this special. Man, I've never owned a Logo Man. Don't plan to own a Logo Man, but I would love to own a Logo Man of any player that I really like and enjoy.
Well, so there are no public sales of a card featuring only LeBron and Steph. There also are no public sales of a card featuring only Luka and Steph. So this is like Curry just doesn't appear on cards with superstar contemporaries. But Luka and LeBron have been featured together. They've been featured together intentionally on cards, on high-end cards even, and they've also been featured unintentionally together on cards. Some of Luka's more popular issues from his second, third, fourth, and fifth years are cards that are, sometimes referred to as LeBron shadow cards, where the picture, the action shot of the card features LeBron in the background. In fact, Luka's 2019 select, his second-year select card, features LeBron prominently in the background, sort of watching Luka take off for a layup, and that's been a card of interest to collectors of Luka for that reason. So Luka and LeBron have been on cards together previously, and even within 2021-22 Flawless, they were featured together. So within this same product, there's a 12-card dual Logo Man set, not to be confused with the 5-card triple Logo Man set. One of the 12 in the dual Logo Man set was LeBron and Luka, a LeBron and Luka dual Logo Man. That card also recently sold. It sold for $102,000, but it wasn't yet graded. It was still in the original sealed Flawless One Touch, which some collectors prefer their Flawless cards to never leave that Panini sealed One Touch. That sale also took place on September 13th in the same auction as the $300,000 sale that's the topic of this segment. So I guess essentially what that boils down to, if we use that sale, the Luka LeBron duel, as sort of a baseline at $102,000, if you just add Steph, add in the special nature of the triple Logo Man, and put it in a PSA 10 holder, and the price triples, which seems significant. How do you guys reconcile the LeBron Luka duel going for $102,000, and then throw in Steph, make it a triple, and put it in a PSA 10, and that card in the same auction goes for over $300,000?
I mean, it doesn't really surprise me.
No.
Steph is universally beloved. Triple Logoman, 70th anniversary, cracked dice look style points, and it's a PSA 10 versus just being in a one touch. To me, the prices feel completely right on both sides.
Agreed. Plus, just the term triple logo man.
Yeah,
I feel like that just makes such an impact to say versus dual logo man.
absolutely. Rolls off the tongue in a different way. These
Yeah.
things are important.
Love to own one someday. But man, there's these prices are impressive. And I don't know about you guys. I know you guys are both huge NBA guys. You're ready for the season. I have made a vow personally that I'm going to be much more mentally and emotionally invested in the NBA this year. Not sure on the card side. I'm going to jump in, but have a feeling you guys might urge me at some point. But as we wrap up the index, super excited to say next week we're going to be bringing Hit Draft back because NBA training camps are open, preseason is underway. It's time to beef up the collections, right?
I can't wait. I'm so
Ryan.
excited.
Ryan, it's time for you to pick. I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. It's time for you to pick a PC player for basketball. It doesn't need to be active. All right. It can be someone retired. Maybe you like Kevin Garnett. Maybe you like Dirk Nowitzki. Maybe you like Reggie Miller, God forbid. Whoever it is, pick somebody, Ryan, so that you can experience the joys, the roller coaster ride of collecting basketball as a season unfolds, as the history of the sport casts a shadow over the performances that are happening. And the performances that are happening remind us of the importance of the history and the accomplishments of the players who define the sport. The NBA's history is much shorter than the NFL or the MLB. And a lot of the greatest players, even the earliest greatest players, are still fresher in the memory and fresher in the mind than they are for the other sports. It's a sport that's more connected because of its shorter history to the entirety of its history, which makes it really interesting to collect players from all different eras. So Ryan, by the time we do that hit draft, let's brainstorm. Let's work together, you, me, and Jack. Let's identify a player for you to start collecting so you can enjoy this NBA season right along with us, man.
That was a phenomenal speech. Drew, I have a request for you. When you're doing the editing, I need the background music from the Independence Day speech playing behind Chris the entire time. That was so impressive. I'm in awe right now. I love it.
So it's funny. I was having a conversation with Drew earlier about, when you need that new project, you let the cards come to you. You let the cards speak to you. But for this one, I'm going to play ball. I'm going to pick two. I'm going to have a retired player PC, and I do need an active player PC.
And an NBA League Pass subscription too, so you can watch every single game.
I can
get
in on that. So by the time we get in here for the hit draft next week, I will have them locked in. I've got some ideas already, but I can't wait.
Let's go, Patrick Williams, baby.
Yeah, we're not going that route. I'm not going with any Chicago
Kobe
Bulls.
White, let's roll.
I love the Bulls, but I won't PC it. Chris, thank you for the insights and the data. As always, Chris McGill from Card Ladder bringing it here on the Index. For Jack Archer, I'm Ryan Green. We will be back next week, back here on the PSA Pod with the hit draft. We'll talk to you.